My name's Rebecca Mead and I am the author of My Life in Middlemarch, and I'm here to talk about that and George Eliot's novel Middlemarch. Well, yeah, Middlemarch is obviously my favourite book, so I could add to that Daniel Deronda by George Eliot and The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot, and basically almost everything that George Eliot has written. But in addition to George Eliot, I would say that among my favourite books, or the books that I return to, I'm embarrassed to say that I've never finished reading In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust, but I have begun it many times over the last 20 years and have therefore read the first volume of that book maybe half a dozen times, and I completely love it, and I'm completely transported every time I read it, but then I'm not quite transported enough. So I've never got to the end of it. Perhaps now that I've written about Middlemarch, I could get to the end of Proust. Among my sort of idols and heroes of journalism, at the top of the list I would say is probably Janet Malcolm, who's my colleague at The New Yorker, whose work I didn't know when I was growing up, but discovered when I moved to New York in my 20s. And I am always so impressed by her ability to see so clearly and describe so acutely and understand what's going on subtextually with somebody. And she has just a wonderfully delicate razor touch, which I admire enormously. Where to begin with a list about the best things about working at The New Yorker? I mean, it's a writer's dream. You know, we have a lot of time to work on stories. We have a lot of resources to travel, to go to places, to talk to people. I have an incredible editor, Daniel Salewski, who is brilliant. The editor-in-chief, David Ramnick, is just very generous in what he allows us to do. And then when you're writing, when you've written a piece, there's this kind of wonderful care and attention from the fact checkers that make sure that you haven't made any mistakes, to the copy editors. We have a closing meeting at the end of when every piece is going to press, and you'll have a conversation where the copy editor says to you, do you think we should have a semicolon here, or should it maybe be a comma? And it's this kind of wonderful close attention and care that is exactly what a writer dreams and hopes to have. I've just been reading the first 2 volumes of the Karl Ove Knausgaard series, My Struggle, which is he's a Norwegian novelist, and this is a 6-volume cycle that's sort of autobiographical, sort of novelistic. It is unbelievably good, and I think I may finish it before I finish Proust if they do the translation in time. What he does is this incredibly close description of really the sort of banal, everyday events of life, but it's elevated by this intellectual reflection and serious thought about the most important things, about death and love and marriage and childhood, and it's transporting. They are amazing. I've not been able to put them down. I knew something about the life of George Eliot before I started writing My Life in Middlemarch. I knew that she was incredibly accomplished, and that I knew that she'd lived with a man that she wasn't married to for 24 years, which is a significant part of her biography. But I didn't know, the detail that I came to know from writing the book, and my sense, I feel like my relationship to her, my understanding of her changed while I was writing my book. I was, very impressed and a little bit intimidated, more than a little bit, like quite intimidated by her as a figure, because of her, immense intellect and accomplishment. But then in researching her life and reading her letters and thinking about what she was doing and thinking about her own struggles and her own losses and her own pain and frailty, I came to feel less scared of her and more tenderly towards her than I had felt initially. And And I also came to feel very, very grateful to her for giving me the chance to think about what her book had meant to me and to think about my own life and my own growing up.